I'm here with Mark from Wolters World, and he is a world traveler who's going to tell you about some of the similarities and differences that he's experienced when traveling in Washington, D.C. Hello, welcome to Trip Hacks DC. My name is Rob, and I am joined with Mark from Wolters World. Mark is a world traveler, and he has an amazing YouTube channel with about 1,500 travel videos right now. So I am just so happy to have him in Washington, D.C. on one of my tours right now so I can show him around, and he's been gracious enough to come onto the channel so that he can share some of his knowledge, and we can give you some information for when you come to Washington, D.C. So what is something about Washington, D.C. that you think is similar to another U.S. city that you've traveled to?
Well, I think one has to do with the tourism, because New York, DC, it's crazy because they both have so many tourists going there.
Sure.
But people actually are going to work every day. And probably the biggest similarity I've seen between New York and DC is that the locals kind of hate the tourists, not because they're tourists, but because they get in the way. Like the tourists are walking and all of a sudden, stop, oh, I gotta take a picture of this famous thing. And then like the locals are like, dude, I'm just trying to get to work, man. Would you just stand to the side? So that is one similarity I have seen for another US city.
So that's a really good point. And that's actually why I really recommend when people visit Washington, D.C. that they try to plan their day so that they're not riding the metro during rush hour. Yes. Because people here go to work, and a lot of people work a 9-to-5 job. So if you're trying to get on the metro at 7 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, there's going to be a lot of locals on there as well. Yeah, and another thing to mention on that point is that you don't want to treat Washington, D.C. like it's Disney World or Las Vegas or something like that where people just come to play and party. But there really are a lot of people who live here and have a life here and work here, and so it's a good mix of that sort of thing.
And that reminds me of another similarity is you have a lot of memorials around town, or a lot of museums that can be really impactful. Like, I mean, we've been to some here where like you walk through and you do get goosebumps. And I've had that in other places we've gone around the world. And that's one of the things is when it's a kind of a somber place, you know, be respectful when you're there. And that's one thing I've seen is you have people, I mean, people are going for the gram in places where they probably shouldn't be. So that is one thing I've seen that's similar all around the world. So that's another thing to look out for too.
So some people say that Washington, D.C. has a different feel than some other American cities. So Mark, do you think that there's some things about Washington, D.C. that you could compare to someplace outside the U.S.?
Yeah, there's one thing about D.C. It has a completely different kind of setup than anywhere in the U.S. Like how the streets are set up, with the roundabouts and things like that. I mean, I know driving around here, it has that, you know, like UK kind of, oh wait, roundabout, which way do I go kind of feel. And the thing is with those roundabouts, it's not the only thing that kind of remind me of the UK and traveling around there. Is actually, we were down at Mount Vernon, George Washington's place. You guys can check it out. It's a really cool day trip. And we were coming back and I'm driving by and I'm like, this reminds me when we were driving like through the villages in England, because there's a lot of that architectural style is there. So you definitely have that. So it has a completely different kind of architectural feel than, for me, anywhere in the U.S. I mean, okay, the Capitol, you see that in the capitals around the other place in the U.S., but the feel and the kind of setup is totally different.
Okay, so let me ask you, what is something about Washington, D.C. that is completely unique that you can't find in any other city in America?
Well, there's kind of two things I kind of feel. One, the museums are free, which is not a common thing, because you go to Chicago, it's, you know, $16-20 to go to a museum. Here, it's free to go in, and that's one of the things that, for me, it makes it a great family experience, because you're not shelling out $100 to take your whole family to a museum. So that's one thing that's awesome. Also, the metro here. Look, for if you're watching this from outside the U.S., we're not big on public transportation in the U.S., but D.C., they've got it. I mean, I know the locals probably say, it's not that great, it's not that, it's fantastic. Look, for someone that doesn't have good public metros and good public transportation where I live, this place is awesome for it. And yes, for me, it's clean. For me, it's efficient. It goes everywhere I want to go. I'm sure you're a local, right? You might not agree with me on the cleanly side of it.
I think there might be some locals who would take issue with that, but I think as a visitor, I definitely understand where you're coming from.
And that's one thing that's really different. It's like, I feel okay to go into the metro, exploring things, and the free nature of the stuff. That's one thing that you just don't see in a lot of the U.S., which is really cool when you come here.
So one thing about everything being free that you kind of have to be careful about is to not try to overdo it.
Yes.
Because when there's over a dozen free museums, you think, goodness, I need to go to every single one of them to get my money's worth. But you don't have to. It's okay to skip some or pick the ones that you really want to do and maybe save some for a future trip.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is especially if we got kids, because we got our kids with us. And my youngest one, we've gone through the Natural History Museum. We've done a great tour with Rob here. And he's like, my feet. I'm like, you probably see him running behind us somewhere. And that is true. Don't try to see everything, because I really feel like museum burnout kind of thing can really happen here. But the thing is, the museums are amazing, so it's well worth going to. But yeah, the burnout is legit here.
So it's something to think about. I've recommended in one of my previous videos that 7 days is actually a good amount of time to plan a trip to Washington, D.C., which you might think is really, really long time, but just because of the hugeness of the museums and the various many things to do, many of which are free, you could definitely fill up that amount of time if you really wanted to.
Yeah, and Rob has some really good stuff for seeing stuff that's not just on the National Mall, exploring out more. There's all kinds of like normal things to do that aren't just history museum related, which makes DC a really cool place to go.
And I think that's it. Thank you, Mark, for coming on the video. I
No
really
problem.
appreciate
Thank
it,
you
and
for
sharing
choosing.
some of your travel knowledge. And like I said, Mark is a world traveler. He has something like 1,500 travel videos on YouTube right now, so you should check him out at Wolters World, and I will leave a link to that in the video description. And if you're coming to Washington, D.C. and you want to sign up for a tour with me, like Mark's family did, you can
awesome.
head on over to my website, triphacksdc.com, to see all of the tours that I offer.
Top-notch stuff.
Thanks for the compliment. I
No
appreciate
problem,
it.
man. I can't say anything better. The guy's awesome.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Bye from DC.